For thousands of years, the ultimate weapon in the history of human warfare has not been forged from steel, nor has it been powered by gunpowder or jet fuel. The ultimate weapon, the one that has decided the fate of empires and the survival of nations, is darkness. In the unforgiving, sprawling expanse of the Sahel, the night has always belonged to the predators. When the blistering African sun sets over the red dust of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, a profound, suffocating blackness envelops the landscape. For over a decade, this darkness was the absolute domain of the insurgency. It was their cloak of invincibility. Heavily armed terrorist columns, numbering in the hundreds, would wait deep in the remote scrubland until the light faded. Then, they would mount their motorcycles and armored pickup trucks, navigating the treacherous terrain entirely by memory and moonlight. They would strike isolated military outposts and sleeping civilian villages with terrifying speed, overwhelming their targets with brutal, chaotic firepower, and then simply melt back into the shadows long before the sun rose. They fought like ghosts. They utilized the profound psychological terror of the unseen. The local African armies, drastically underfunded and deliberately under-equipped by their former colonial masters, were effectively blind as soon as evening fell. They were forced to huddle behind the concrete walls and sandbags of their forward operating bases, clutching their outdated rifles, staring out into the pitch-black desert, waiting nervously for an attack they could not see coming. The Western military forces deployed in the region, such as the French Barkhane troops and the American Special Operators, possessed the advanced technology to pierce this darkness. They had the third-generation night vision goggles, the high-definition thermal imaging cameras, and the infrared lasers that turn midnight into high noon. But in a display of calculated, cynical geopolitical manipulation, they routinely kept this transformative technology entirely to themselves. They patrolled the night in their armored vehicles, observing the movements of the enemy, but they rarely shared this real-time tactical vision with their African counterparts. The message was clear and deeply patronizing. The sophisticated art of night warfare was strictly reserved for the armies of the West, while the African soldier was expected to fight blindly in the dirt. This was not merely a logistical failure. It was a deliberate strategy of technological apartheid, designed to ensure that African nations remained permanently dependent on foreign military assistance for their very survival. You cannot secure your sovereignty if you cannot secure the night. This devastating cycle of nighttime slaughter and engineered dependency continued relentlessly until Captain Ibrahim Traoré seized the reins of destiny in Burkina Faso. Traoré is not a politician who views warfare through the sterile lens of diplomatic briefings. He is a seasoned combat officer who has lived in the dust and the blood of the front lines. He deeply understood the paralyzing psychological toll that the night took on his men, and he knew that pouring billions of dollars into daytime armored vehicles or heavy artillery would be completely meaningless if the enemy could simply bypass them under the cover of darkness. He recognized that to permanently break the back of the insurgency, he did not just need to win the daytime battles. He had to aggressively, unapologetically conquer the night. He had to take the ultimate weapon of the terrorists and violently turn it against them. He had to transform his hunted soldiers into the ultimate apex predators of the Sahel. In a series of rapid, brilliantly calculated procurement moves that completely bypassed the crippling Western arms embargoes, Traoré executed a massive technological pivot. He established direct, unconditional defense partnerships with nations that were willing to provide high-end, Tier 1 tactical equipment without the suffocating neo-colonial strings attached. He did not just buy rifles and bullets. He purchased vision. He acquired thousands of sets of advanced night vision goggles, high-resolution thermal imaging optics, and infrared targeting lasers. He imported specialized tactical gear, modern Kevlar body armor, and suppressed weapon systems. But acquiring the hardware was only the first step of this monumental tactical revolution. Traoré knew that handing a sophisticated thermal optic to an untrained soldier is completely useless. He needed to forge a new breed of African warrior, a force capable of executing complex, synchronized, high-intensity operations in absolute darkness. He immediately initiated the massive expansion and rigorous training of the elite Special Forces units, the Red Berets, transforming them into highly specialized night ops strike teams. These units, famously known as the Cobras, were subjected to grueling, relentless training regimens designed to break their fear of the dark and completely rewire their tactical instincts. They were taught the extreme discipline of light and noise control. They learned how to navigate treacherous, uneven terrain without uttering a single sound. They were trained to communicate exclusively through silent hand signals and secure, encrypted radios. They learned how to read the faint, glowing green phosphor displays of their night vision tubes, identifying the subtle differences between a moving animal and an armed insurgent hiding in the brush. They mastered the devastating application of thermal optics, which do not rely on ambient light at all, but instead detect the microscopic differences in heat signatures. Through a thermal scope, an insurgent attempting to hide behind a thick bush or a mud wall glows brightly against the cool background of the night, rendering traditional camouflage completely and utterly useless. The tactical implementation of these newly forged night hunters fundamentally shattered the equilibrium of the entire war. The insurgents, who had grown arrogant and comfortable in their nocturnal supremacy, were suddenly plunged into a nightmare of their own making. Imagine the profound, terrifying realization of a terrorist commander operating deep in the bush. For years, he believed that the moment the sun went down, he was invisible. He gathers his fighters in a remote, unlit encampment, feeling perfectly secure in the pitch-black environment. But a mile away, advancing with complete ghostly silence, is a platoon of Traoré's elite Red Berets. They are wearing multicam fatigues that blend seamlessly into the shadows. Over their eyes, the night vision goggles paint the world in a crisp, illuminated green. They can see the insurgents moving around their campfires. They can see the sentries standing guard. They can see the exact layout of the enemy compound. The Burkina Faso Special Forces do not charge in blindly. They execute a highly coordinated surgical envelopment. Infrared lasers, invisible to the naked eye, but shining like brilliant spotlights through the night vision goggles, silently paint the targets. The countdown is given through encrypted earpieces. And then, the silence of the desert is violently shattered by the synchronized, a devastating crack of suppressed assault rifles. The insurgents are eliminated before they even realize they are under attack. They cannot see the muzzle flashes. They cannot see where the fire is coming from. They fire blindly into the darkness, hitting nothing, while the Burkinabe operators systematically and ruthlessly dismantle the encampment with absolute precision. This is not a battle. It is an extermination. It is the flawless execution of asymmetric night warfare, performed entirely by African soldiers operating at a Tier 1 level. But Traoré's military genius lies in his ability to integrate multiple layers of technology into a singular, inescapable kill chain. He did not just deploy ground troops with night vision. He integrated them perfectly with his newly acquired fleet of Bayraktar TB2 and Akinci combat drones. Yet the sky and the ground were finally, lethally connected. While the elite Cobra units maneuver silently through the bush, a drone loiters silently 20,000 feet above them, providing an unblinking, high-definition thermal overwatch. If the insurgents attempt to flee the ground ambush, their heat signatures are instantly tracked by the drone operator sitting in a command center hundreds of miles away. The drone paints the fleeing vehicles with a laser designator, and a smart munition is dropped from the sky, incinerating the targets before they can escape. The insurgents are trapped in a lethal, high-tech vice. If they stay in their camps, they are slaughtered by the ghost squads on the ground. If they run into the open desert, they are evaporated by laser-guided munitions from the sky. But there is absolutely no refuge left in the darkness. The psychological impact of this tactical revolution has been catastrophic for the insurgency. The fear that once paralyzed the local populations has now been forcibly transferred to the terrorists. The hunters have become the hunted. Enemy communications intercepted by military intelligence reveal a growing, widespread panic among the insurgent ranks. They are refusing to travel at night. They are abandoning their established supply routes. They are suffering from massive desertions because they realize that the very environment they once used as a weapon has been turned against them. Traoré has essentially weaponized the night itself by stripping away their ability to move unseen, and he has drastically reduced the frequency and the severity of their surprise attacks on civilian villages. The people of Burkina Faso are beginning to sleep soundly for the first time in a decade, knowing that the shadows outside their doors are no longer filled with foreign predators, but with their own heavily armed, technologically superior protectors. The geopolitical ramifications of Traoré's night warfare masterclass are equally profound, sending quiet tremors of anxiety through the halls of Western intelligence agencies. For decades, the global military hierarchy was predicated on the absolute assumption that African armies were fundamentally incapable of executing highly complex, technology-driven, synchronized night operations. The West used this perceived incompetence as the ultimate justification for their permanent, overbearing military presence on the continent. They sold the narrative that without French or American special forces holding their hands, the African states would instantly crumble. When videos and reports began to surface showing Burkinabe special forces executing flawless, surgical night raids, utilizing advanced thermal optics and coordinated drone strikes without a single Western advisor present, the old neo-colonial narrative was completely shattered. The military attachés sitting in the embassies in Ouagadougou were forced to report back to Paris and Washington that the Burkinabe army had evolved into a highly lethal, independent fighting force. Traoré proved that tactical brilliance and technological mastery are not genetically exclusive to the global North. And he proved that when you remove the suffocating constraints of the Western arms embargoes and you provide an African soldier with the right equipment, the rigorous training, and the unwavering backing of a visionary leader, that soldier can perform at the absolute highest levels of modern warfare. This is the ultimate danger that Ibrahim Traoré poses to the neo-colonial establishment. He is not just defeating a localized terrorist threat. He is actively, systematically destroying the myth of African military inferiority. He is demonstrating to the entire continent that true sovereignty is entirely achievable, and he is not keeping this blueprint to himself. Through the newly forged alliance of Sahel states, the AES Traoré is actively sharing these advanced night warfare tactics, the specialized training regimens, and the crucial intelligence networks with his brothers in Mali and Niger. The elite units of the three nations are beginning to conduct joint, synchronized operations across their borders, creating an impenetrable, high-tech security shield that spans the entire Sahelian belt. The era of the African soldier fighting blindly in the dark with outdated equipment is officially over. The era of relying on foreign empires to illuminate the battlefield is dead and buried in the red dust. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has flipped the switch. He has conquered the shadows. The red berets are moving silently through the night, guided by the green glow of their optics and the fierce, unyielding spirit of their ancestors. They are taking their country back, inch by inch, village by village, and under the cover of the very darkness the enemy once thought they owned. If you are watching the events unfolding in West Africa through the biased, distorted lens of the mainstream media, you are missing the greatest military evolution of the 21st century. Do not look away. The balance of global power is shifting in the dark. The ghost squads are hunting. The night belongs to Burkina Faso. If you recognize the brilliant, undeniable tactical mastery of Captain Ibrahim Traoré and the historic evolution of the African military, hit the like button to break through the algorithmic suppression of the empire. Share this geopolitical analysis with anyone who still believes the outdated myths of Western superiority. Subscribe to Africa Unchained to stay on the absolute bleeding edge of the strategies, the technologies, and the fearless leaders who are actively rewriting the destiny of the continent. The dawn is coming, and Africa is finally permanently unchained.